Welcome to this EDUcast, Global Call Quality Remote Workers, sponsored by Virsae and Telecom Reseller. And with me today is Ross Williams, the Virsae Chief Success Officer, and I'm Gary Auden. And as we always do, we talk about our agenda. And we're really focusing on call quality, especially since we've had a lot more conferencing going on than we had even 6 months ago. How the quality has changed, quality improvements, visibility into looking at what's happening in your environment, measuring the customer experience, and discussing analytics and how it's done correctly. So let's start off with the first slide. You have a very large database of information about call quality. Would you provide some insights of what the database contains and how it is distributed across multiple industries?
Well, the reason I took a look at this, Gary, was that during the pandemic, when globally the economic activity across countries and across business sectors seemed to drop away, but looking at our cloud platform, which is gathering the statistics from our global customer base, we're looking and seeing our peak global traffic actually increasing and increasing significantly, up to almost 200,000 simultaneous streams at peak. And so that was up 67%, and our overall call volume was up 32%. So I'm sitting there thinking, why is this happening in a period of economic slowdown? So I took a look at the demographics and the verticals of our customer base, and you can see there we're split between healthcare, finance and insurance, 13% communications, information technology, and 12% central and local government. So those businesses or those companies, organisations, were really at the epicenter of the response to the global pandemic, and that would explain why our traffic statistics went up so much. That was also followed with increases across the board. So our active users are up. The number of reports that were run was up. The dashboards that were opened and running were up, along with traffic. So everything lifted from our perspective with the type of customers we have in the various verticals.
Is that graph at the bottom of this page demonstrating that growth of traffic you saw?
Yes, it is. And this graph and the others on subsequent slides, they kind of centre around the end of March. So we've kind of got a period of time there from a 3-month window that covers most of that pandemic period, just sort of 6 weeks before the peak and 6 weeks after, to see exactly what was going on during that period, because it's very, very interesting.
What have been the effects of remote working since we started dealing with the COVID-19 epidemic? Would you interpret this graphic for us, and what is the scale on the bottom?
Yeah, so scale on the bottom similar. So we're centered there actually around the March 23rd, which we discovered was the world's worst session quality day. So we had this perfect storm of, across our base, that massive increase in traffic, up 67 at peak and 32% total. So you had that huge spike in increased activity, yet you had the workers moving from enterprise and corporate environments and having to work from home during those lockdown periods. So you had this perfect storm of a massive increase of traffic and at the end users moving to unmanaged networks, working from home, so working on the home Wi-Fi or even wired connections at home that are not under the control of corporate or enterprise management and just don't work to the same standards. So the consequence of that was there was a massive spike and a huge impact on quality. That quality of experience, as I say, the world's worst quality day was March 23rd. And believe it or not, this is across a massive customer base, across a base that generates around 600 million calls a month. Almost 70% of those interactions had some degree of bad quality. So something that affected them in quite a bad way. Even for a brief period of time, but something that got in the way of clear communication between the parties.
We'll continue talking about call quality, all right? Call quality improvement. According to this chart, a lot of traffic has a mean opinion score of 3.6. What does that mean to those who are participating in the calls and collaboration sessions?
Yeah, so a MOS score, median opinion score of 3.6 or below, that really rates the quality of that interaction as quite poor. So the end users would describe that as perhaps distorted voice, robotic voice, calls could drop out or disconnect unexpectedly. Two parties on a call, one could hear the other person and not the same in reverse. So the experience that people were getting is often asymmetrical. And that, that kind of lines up with the way that home internet typically works for people too. So your download speed and your download bandwidth is typically much greater than your upload. And that's done traditionally because, most of the consumption of media is from the internet back into that home situation, not so much the other way. But of course, during the pandemic, the transfer of data became much more symmetrical, and it's running on a network that's not really designed to support that. And you can see there, this red represents interactions or sessions that were just really below par. So the people would have really struggled to communicate that were experiencing that sort of MOS.
The mean opinion score of 4.0 or better is what we like to have. What is this graph at the bottom of the slide demonstrating to us?
Yeah, so what it did, you saw the red, between these two different slides, you saw the red ramp down and the amber has ramped up. So what this proved to us over the period of the pandemic with all of these struggles, the increased traffic and the remote workers, it proved to us that our customer base was able to tune their environments, because we saw the red sessions, the ones that were really bad, they dropped away and they've been replaced with sessions that were amber, so satisfactory. So these ones represented here are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they are quite usable. So this has demonstrated to us that it's possible through tuning your environment, making the configuration changes to adapt from that enterprise working to a home working environment, and to get good results. It's absolutely spelled out here by the numbers.
There have been traditional ways to improve call quality. What have those been, and why are they limited in scope?
The challenge that most people have, and the listeners may be able to relate to this, is that you can have tools, if you like, or traditional IT tools, or maybe even specialist UC tools. The problem with most of them is they still require technical people to be involved. And usually, within an organization, there might be one or maybe two technical people that are capable of using those tools and digging around and sometimes coming up with the right answer, sometimes coming up with the wrong answer, as illustrated there. But it is very manual. You're doing sort of one thing at a time. There's huge logs to look through. There's a lot more problem solving to go, rather than being led directly to the answers. So one or two extremely technical people within an organization still required to troubleshoot these scenarios, and to do it one at a time, sort of in a serial fashion. That's kind of the old way.
Does this introduce bias and errors as well?
Oh, absolutely, Gary. There's natural human bias. We all have it all. We all have our biases, and what you get in these situations is the UC teams or the voice teams have a natural inclination to blame the network. Their applications that often have a deep legacy in TDM and ran on distinctly different networks in the past worked fine. But as soon as they're put into that IP network, where the network is essentially not real time, packets can be lost. It's a completely different environment. The UC teams will naturally tend lean towards blaming the network. And it's precisely the same in the other direction. So the data network guys don't really have the visibility of the full stack, but what they do see from their network is that it's working perfectly. And the data network guys tend to blame the application. So you get a bit of finger pointing going on.
You're advancing a better call quality visibility view. Would you go into that for us?
Right, well, the new way, so the way that VSM or Virsae Service Management works, takes that cloud approach and big data approach, and we overlay machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we take what the best engineers are doing, the old way, the manual way of doing this. We take that and we apply those processes, we automate them to start with, and then we apply them to every single scenario. So we're not just troubleshooting poor scenarios. And because we take a service management approach, we dig deeper. So through automation, we understand the configuration of all of the elements that are involved in a communication stream and a call. And when you take a step back and take a global view of that, you end up with a massive database, a massive repository of network performance, jitter, packet loss, latency versus configuration, capacity, release. And when you multiply that up again, so we're looking at around 600 million streams every single month across an entire database. When you apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to that, the answers, the reconfiguration that needs to be made, the answers simply lie within that data. So during the recent pandemic, as our customer base went through, ran the record numbers of reports and dashboards and things that they looked at, we can understand the effects of the changes that they made as a result. And therefore you can put that together and come up with recommendations based on global data. So in our view, this is the new way of doing it. And it's simply taking that manual troubleshooting that was done by one or two technical people in the past and modernizing that and treating that, the way we can in the new world through machine learning, artificial intelligence.
Customer experience is more than just measuring or monitoring the real-time control protocol or quality experience. Help us interpret what you mean by 370% and the other figures on this slide.
This goes back to referencing our cloud environment, Gary, and during that time period, the number of reports across the board run by our user base was up by 370%. So there was a massive increase. And when we look at those reports and break them down, the least that we got was more than doubling the number of activity, and some of them are up almost 2,500%. So we're able to see how our users were using VSM to troubleshoot these situations. And we're also able to see what they did because we understand the environments, we understand the changes that are made to them. And then we're able to see, as you've seen earlier in this presentation, we're able to see the results on that. And call quality improved significantly. So it went from almost 70% of sessions in that MOS band of below 3.6, and that moved up into a lot of those calls moved into the good range, and some of them moved into the satisfactory range. So we can see absolutely that it's possible to do this. It's possible to tune your environment, and in fact that you need to tune your environment when your workers move from being on the enterprise network to working remotely.
Unified communications and call centers need to deliver very high quality connections for the users and customers. Would you provide some information that your virtual engineer measures and reports?
This is the way we slice and dice the data, because we've got such a huge amount of data. We're talking about in excess of 12 billion different data points every month coming in from our customers' environment, and that relates to release, capacity, configuration, security, continuity, configuration. It's all in the mix, and we also get a whole lot of information coming through, and increasingly now from contact centers. So contact centers are, of course, really at the center of the epicenter. When you're you need to call a supplier or a vendor. The a voice call is really essential if it's a complex interaction. You can't fall back and just use chatbots or just text messaging to contact. If you've got an insurance claim, for example, that's a complex interaction, you need to pick up the phone and call someone. So we've had an increased focus on contact centers and getting all the contact center configuration and metrics through. So we're now able to produce call quality statistics based on individual agents, individual queues or skills within a contact center. We're able to overlay that complete caller experience along with the caller's journey. So as they progress through the contact center, maybe spoken to one or two different agents, maybe initially they've done some sort of pre-validation within an IVR before going to an agent. We can track all that through cradle to grave now with the quality of experience overlaid on the top of that.
Alex is your virtual engineer. This is his dashboard. Would you interpret the dashboard for us?
Yes, so this is a great example of that automation, machine learning, and AI. So that top panel there where the blue arrow is, that's pointing to a real-time stream, so using real-time protocol. And what we see there is we've pointed out that there's an issue with that stream. So that stream has poor quality based on all of the data we've mined across our entire database and the performance of the network, and we lay that across together and look at it. We're able to pick up the pattern that relates to that. So when we see that type of network performance with that type of configuration, the fact that DSCP has a value of 0, that's the likely cause of poor quality in this instance. And this is just really drilled down into the detail. This is just looking at one particular stream. So that level of expertise that engineers used to have to troubleshoot a situation like this, that's all been fully automated. All the heavy lifting is done for you, and it just points out the issue.
You've added more to this dashboard on the lower right. What does that represent now?
Yeah, so this is another way of looking at the data, and it goes to that bias that we discussed, where you can turn around and say, the UC guys will turn around and say, what's network? Well, what we've done here is we're showing the network. We're showing every layer 3 device, so every layer 3 switch or router, and how that goes against the volumes of poor quality. So you've got poor quality session, and that's shown by the amber and red stripes on that. And you can see across all of the layer 3 devices, across all the routers, the poor quality kind of exists almost equally on all of them in terms of a percentage. So that indicates there's actually nothing wrong with the network. There's not one network component that's causing an issue. If it was, it would be bright red, or there'd be a lot of amber on it. But in this case, you can see that it's not. I mean, there is poor quality in this example environment, but it's not the network that's causing it.
People love the term deeper dive. You're taking us into a deeper dive of what your customers can see about the behavior of their environment. What do you learn from this deeper dive?
Yeah, so in this example, we've gone, and it's actually the same dashboard, it's just a different tab pushed on it. We've jumped down and looking at the CODEC. So, we're looking really deeply within the stream at very deep settings. And of course, these are completely invisible to traditional IT tools. And you can see there that when the codec is in the call is a G711A type codec, that's causing poor quality. So that's when you've got that combination of jitter, packet loss, latency, and some of these things, for example, on a home network, there's probably nothing you can do about that because they're unmanaged and the internet is unmanaged. You can see here that in this environment, if they simply change the codec away from 711A, even though they make it 711 MULAW or 729, if they change the codec, they're going to get a resolution to this problem. That's a great example of just tuning that configuration to something that suits the new remote working.
Changing numbers into graphics does make a difference. What do these graphics mean, and why did you add the graphics to the dashboard?
Yeah, so this particular one here is, it demonstrates our global data. So I know customers and particularly contact centers like to benchmark themselves. So what we've done across our entire customer base is we anonymize the data, and then we show individual customers where they sit in terms of being world class. And this is just an example. So we do that in a number of different ways, but this example's relating specifically back to voice quality. So, you know, even during the period of the pandemic, if you wanted to be providing a world-class service, you needed your media streams to be 1% or less of those media streams to have any sort of negative impact from a quality perspective. And this particular environment, we're demonstrating to the customer that they are pretty close to world-class. There's only 1.2% of their streams have negative quality. And when you break down the pie chart, you can see from the amount of amber there that you know, even within that 1.2, more than half of that 1.2 is still in the satisfactory range. So you know, they can be pretty pleased with their performance.
Alex is your virtual engineer, and for those interested, these are 2 URLs that you can access to learn more about what Alex does. For information about Virsae itself, you have the 2 sites available, plus their phone numbers. Well, thank you very much, Ross. It's been another enlightening EDUcast in our series. Thank you again.
Well, thanks for your time, Gary. It's always a pleasure.